I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty.
The unthinkable proclamation. For weeks, the world believed King Charles was dying. His doctors, his council, his people, they were all fed a narrative of a failing monarch. They were all wrong. He wasn't dying, he was hunting. And the prey, operating from the heart of his own palace, was his wife, Queen Camilla. This is a story of how a king's greatest personal betrayal triggered the most ruthless institutional purge in modern royal history. Hello, everyone. This is the Royal Sentinel, and what I am about to share with you is something I never thought I would be reporting in my entire career. Just hours ago, information surfaced that has sent absolute shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, challenging the very foundation of the modern monarchy. The words fell like thunder through the ancient halls, spoken by a king pushed to the absolute limit. Effective immediately, King Charles III declared, his voice, though weakened by illness, cutting through centuries of royal protocol like a blade, Camilla Parker Bowles is no longer Queen of the United Kingdom. The chamber froze. A suffocating silence descended, absorbing every sound, every breath, every heartbeat. This was not just a royal address. It was a reckoning. It was history being rewritten in real time. Prince William, the Prince of Wales, stood rigid, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. A man trained from birth to conceal every emotion, now struggling to contain an internal earthquake. Beside him, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, found his hand, her knuckles, white with tension, a silent exchange confirming that everything they knew had just been shattered. What could possibly drive a king who waited 70 years for his crown to issue such a devastating public decree against his own wife? What unforgivable act, what catastrophic betrayal could have forced such an unthinkable outcome? According to high-level palace insiders, the answer lies buried beneath layers of palace intrigue, manipulated medical records, and a single overheard phone call that exposed a conspiracy of breathtaking ambition. This isn't just another royal drama of personal feelings and marital strife. This is about raw power, institutional survival, and a calculated attempt to seize control of the British crown itself. And here is what no one is telling you. The evidence trail leads not just to falsified documents, but to a carefully orchestrated plot to sideline a reigning monarch under the guise of wifely concern. A hostile acquisition attempted from within the very heart of the royal family. Stay with me, because what you are about to discover will completely change how you view the monarchy. This is the story of a king who, while fighting for his life, discovered the person he trusted most was orchestrating his downfall. The truth is far more shocking than any headline could possibly capture. This was not a family dispute. This was the institutional elimination of a queen. The crown is not a gift. It is a contract. According to high-level palace insiders, those were the chilling words spoken by King Charles III behind the reinforced doors of the Oak Room at Windsor Castle just days before his abdication announcement. This single statement reframes the entire crisis, elevating it from a tawdry marital dispute to a matter of grave constitutional importance. The official justification presented to the Royal Council for stripping Camilla of her titles was not one of personal betrayal, but of systematic institutional subversion. Let us be absolutely clear about the charges. This was not a simple case of a wife misrepresenting her husband's health. Sources connected to the Crown's legal representatives describe it as a methodical dismantling of the sovereign's authority, a plot we can now identify as the Regency Gambit. The strategy was as brilliant as it was treasonous. By manufacturing a medical crisis through falsified records, Camilla intended to trigger the Regency Act of 1937, a piece of legislation designed for a monarch's incapacitation. This would have forced the creation of a Regency Council, a body she, as the concerned and ever-present queen, would have been positioned to dominate. Consider the implications. While King Charles fought cancer in a state of forced isolation, Camilla would have effectively ruled as a shadow sovereign, consolidating power and remaking the monarchy in her own image. This was a hostile acquisition, an attempt to seize control of the firm itself. The king was not just a husband being deceived, he was the chief executive of the monarchy, defending the organization from an internal threat. The accusation, therefore, was not adultery or cruelty. It was a calculated attempt to undermine the monarchy's essential political stability. This represents a level of ambition that is almost Shakespearean in its scope. Watch the archived footage of the announcement. Look at the moment Camilla's carefully constructed facade crumbles. It is not the look of a woman who is heartbroken. It is the look of a chess grandmaster who has just realized she has been playing against a superior opponent all along. She had planned for every contingency except one, being exposed by the man she believed she had already neutralized. To understand the king's abdication, we must rewind the clock 7 days to the quiet, secluded sanctuary of Sandringham House. It was the king and queen's wedding anniversary. Despite the relentless pain from his illness, Charles had insisted on preparing a personal gift, a traditional brooch nestled in dark green velvet, a quiet gesture for the woman he had fought a lifetime to love. Picture him moving slowly through those historic corridors, a single lantern casting wavering light on the portraits of his ancestors. In that moment, he was not King Charles III, the sovereign. He was simply a husband. But as he approached Camilla's private study, he heard her voice. Normally, her tone carried a familiar warmth. This was different. Sharper, colder, commanding. She was on the phone. Protocol dictated, he announced himself. But something, an instinct, a deep, primal dread held him frozen outside the carved oak door. What he heard next changed everything. "I don't want it to sound critical," Harland Camilla said, her voice as calm as someone discussing garden arrangements. "I want it to sound more times critical than it actually is. Just include the right phrasing. Severe exhaustion. Indefinite rest required. That will persuade the council." Dr. Harland, Charles's personal physician, the man he trusted with his life, and Camilla was instructing him to falsify medical records. Can you imagine that moment? The man you love is battling cancer, and you are standing outside a door, listening to your wife orchestrate your political removal. But she wasn't done. She immediately dialed another number, her voice now carrying the barely contained excitement of someone nearing checkmate. "Good. Then we move forward. I need the documents for the changes within the Royal Committee prepared immediately. We cannot allow those indecisive fools to obstruct us." Every word was a knife. This wasn't just medical manipulation. This was a coup, carefully engineered, methodically planned, hidden beneath the appearance of wifely concern. The anniversary gift slipped from Charles's fingers. The velvet box landed soundlessly on the Persian carpet, but to him, it echoed like shattering glass. Years of devotion, decades of fighting for acceptance, a lifetime of choosing this woman over duty, over his own mother's approval, all of it reduced to a prop in a ruthless power play. He stepped back without a sound. The king who returned to his chambers was not broken. He was galvanized. From that moment forward, King Charles III abandoned the role of patient patriarch and assumed instead the cold precision of a monarch at war. The public was fed a carefully constructed narrative. The king, citing strict medical advice, was withdrawing completely from public life. The press ran rampant with speculation about his worsening condition, creating the perfect cover for what was truly happening behind the scenes. This was not illness, it was institutional warfare. Charles understood that every move he made was being watched, not by a distant enemy, but by his wife's network of sympathizers within the palace walls. So he moved with surgical precision, drawing on instincts honed during his Royal Navy service and lessons absorbed from watching his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, rule with quiet, devastating effectiveness. From his private library at Buckingham Palace, a serene chamber that now served as a command center, he initiated a covert counteroffensive that a senior court official would later call Operation Crown Shield. This was not a family intervention. It was a counterintelligence operation designed to protect the very integrity of the crown. His first and only recruits were the Prince and Princess of Wales. He summoned Prince William and Catherine, not as his son and daughter-in-law, but as the two most senior and trusted officers of the institution. In a meeting sealed from all aides, prying eyes, and recording devices, he laid out the chilling details of the Sandringham revelation. William's reaction was reportedly one of silent, controlled fury. This was not just a betrayal of his father, it was a direct assault on the legacy he was sworn to protect. Catherine, ever the strategist, immediately began processing the operational challenges. They were now a secret war council of 3, operating deep behind enemy lines. Their mission was twofold. First, to gather irrefutable, legally sound evidence of the conspiracy, and second, to do so without alerting Camilla that her Regency gambit was being systematically dismantled. They had to fight a war in the shadows of their own home, treating every courtier as a potential informant and every official communication as a potential leak. The game of attrition had begun. While King Charles secured the strategic high ground, it was Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who descended into the forensic details of the conspiracy. Her public persona is one of effortless grace, but behind the scenes, she possesses a meticulous, detail-oriented mind that the plotters fatally underestimated. Tasked with reviewing palace correspondence related to the king's medical care, a routine administrative duty most would find mind-numbing, she noticed something odd. It was a series of encrypted emails between Camilla's private account and Dr. Adrian Harland, sent at irregular late-night hours. The language was coded, vague, and careful. Instead of discussing health, they referenced arrangements, schedules, and contingency planning. But one message stood out like a beacon in the digital fog. An email from Harlan to Camilla with a single password-protected attachment labeled simply Plan B. Catherine's instincts, honed by over a decade of navigating the subtle and often treacherous currents of palace politics, screamed danger. She had always treated Camilla with public respect. The woman had, after all, made Charles happy. But this went beyond family drama into something far darker, something that smelled of institutional subversion. Without a moment's hesitation, she brought her findings directly to Prince William. Now, understand William's position here. He was already under crushing pressure, worrying for his father, while grappling with the immense weight of potentially becoming king far sooner than anyone had expected. When he read Catherine's findings, his expression reportedly hardened line by line. The vague respect he held for his stepmother, the belief that she had brought stability to his father's later years, was shattered like a hammer through ice. The evidence revealed not a concerned wife, but a co-conspirator. From that moment, Catherine transitioned from a supportive family member into the lead investigator for Operation Crown Shield. She began a systematic analysis of palace server logs and digital archives, working with a single, trusted IT expert seconded from the Royal Signals Corps. She was hunting for proof, meticulously building a case against a sitting queen, knowing that a single misstep, a single careless query could alert the enemy and plunge the monarchy into open, catastrophic warfare. With Catherine's digital breadcrumbs as their guide, the investigation focused its full force on the weakest link in the conspiracy, Dr. Adrian Harland. Prince William and the Princess of Wales operated like intelligence agents, using their most trusted staff to piece together a comprehensive file on the physician's activities. A painstaking analysis of palace telecommunication metadata and server logs uncovered something decisive. A recorded telephone conversation between Camilla and Harland, captured on a secondary archival server that neither of them knew existed. When Prince William played the audio file, he reportedly felt a surge of both fury and disbelief. There it was, Camilla's voice, measured, calm, and utterly unrepentant. instructing Harlan to inflate the king's medical condition, to use alarming terminology, deliberately designed to remove Charles from all official responsibilities. It was irrefutable, damning, and absolutely devastating. Concurrently, a loyal and long-serving nurse who had grown suspicious of Dr. Harlan's private consultations with Camilla discreetly obtained and delivered a copy of the king's original medical report. When the War Council placed this document side by side with the official report Harlan had circulated to the Privy Council, the full scope of the deception was laid bare. The original authentic report described King Charles's condition as stable, requiring observation but presenting no immediate danger to his ability to rule. The second falsified document painted a catastrophic picture of severe decline, nervous exhaustion, and recommended indefinite rest and potential intervention. The evidence was now a perfect, undeniable trinity. The two contradictory medical reports, the digital trail of clandestine emails, and the audio recording of a direct order to commit medical fraud. They brought the complete Harlan file to the king. As Charles, with unsteady fingers, accepted the device and pressed play, hearing his wife discuss him as an obstacle to be managed rather than a person to be loved, reportedly carved something deep and permanent into his soul. But Charles is a monarch, and monarchs do not have the luxury of emotional collapse. The evidence was in, judgment was coming. Armed with an undeniable and meticulously documented case, King Charles made one final, ethically necessary move. He would give Camilla a chance to confess. Let that sink in. This was not an act of mercy, nor was it a search for reconciliation. It was a sovereign's final due process, a last attempt to see if any shred of integrity remained before passing irreversible judgment. The confrontation took place in a small, private drawing room at Windsor Castle, the air thick with oppressive silence and the weight of decades of shared history. Camilla entered with her practiced assurance, a faint smile on her lips, ready to deploy the charm that had served her for a lifetime. She had sensed Charles's emotional distance, of course, but she believed it was a symptom of his illness, a weakness she could soothe and manage. The king did not present the evidence immediately. He did not raise his voice. Instead, he met her gaze with eyes that carried both the profound sorrow of a betrayed husband and the unassailable authority of a sovereign. Calmly, almost gently, he asked her about her recent communications with Dr. Harlan. He inquired about her grave concerns for his health, and Camilla, with a soft sigh and carefully crafted sadness, denied everything. She wove a masterful narrative of misunderstanding of her actions, stemming solely from a deep and abiding fear for his well-being. She even attempted to redirect blame, suggesting that jealous courtiers had fabricated rumors to undermine her position and fracture their marriage. Her bold denials, her complete and utter absence of remorse, extinguished the final ember of hope within Charles. In that moment, he understood with absolute clarity. There was no regret here, only strategy. When Camilla departed, still cloaked in the posture of an injured and devoted spouse, the king knew his course was set. The institutional justification for what he was about to do was now complete. His personal anguish could not be allowed to supersede his constitutional responsibility. He would not and could not leave his heir a monarchy corroded by such profound and unrepentant deception. In the immense solitude of his study at Buckingham Palace, with the full weight of the Harlan file lying before him, King Charles III made the loneliest and most consequential decision of his life. His duty was absolute. The integrity of the crown had been compromised by a hostile internal actor, and the only way to restore it, the only way to cauterize the wound, was through a clean, decisive, and public act of institutional purification. Without delay, he summoned his private secretary and issued his orders. His decision was final. He would abdicate the throne, effective immediately. The transfer of power to the Prince of Wales would be swift and constitutionally binding, but more than that, the complete findings of Operation Crown Shield, the damning audio recordings, the contradictory medical reports, the entire email trail would be presented in full before the Royal Council. Justice would not be hidden in the shadows of palace intrigue. It would be stark, public, and unmistakable. Seated at his ancient desk, the king lifted his pen and began signing the new will, the abdication decree, and the legal instruments that would formally bar Camilla from using any royal styling or designation. Each document witnessed the end of an era. Every signature felt unbearably heavy, a testament to the 70 years he had waited for a crown he would now surrender, not because of illness, but because of betrayal. As a final private act, he composed a handwritten note to Camilla. It was not a letter of accusation, but a short, intimate farewell, stripped of all royal ceremony, a final closing of a chapter that had defined him for decades. He sealed it in a plain envelope, knowing it would never be sent. It was a message for himself, a tangible marker of the moment he fully and finally chose duty over love. Think about that weight. How many of us could make that choice? Justice over love, the institution over the individual. This was the burden of the crown made real. The days following the king's earth-shattering announcement saw the swift and silent execution of what can only be described as the institutional elimination of a queen. While London was thrown into a frenzy of speculation and preparation for the coronation of a new king, a quiet and somber drama unfolded within the walls of Buckingham Palace. Camilla, now officially divested of all royal titles and privileges by a legally binding decree, was instructed to vacate her residence. There was no ceremonial departure, no tearful farewells from loyal staff, no stately motorcade. This was not a separation. It was a clinical removal. She walked the corridors where she had once commanded immense authority, a ghost in her own former life, permitted to take only a few boxes of personal items. As an unmarked vehicle slipped out of a rear service gate, hidden from the prying lenses of the world's press, Camilla did not look back. That expression, once so full of proud, defiant ambition, was now a hollow mask, emptied of all emotion. Her destination was a remote, secluded manor in the southern countryside, a property owned by a distant and obscure trust, surrounded by acres of forgotten woodland. It was, in effect, a sentence of internal exile. Her communications would be monitored, her visitors screened, her movements restricted. She was to be erased from public life, a non-person in the institutional machine she had tried so desperately to command. This was not a punishment born of anger or spite. It was a cold, strategic necessity. The monarchy, in its new, more clinical form under a future King William, could not afford a rival court, a center of discontent and intrigue led by a disgraced former queen. Her removal had to be absolute. The silence and solitude of her new existence were a punishment far heavier than any public shaming, an enduring daily reminder that in the game of crowns, there is no second place. There is only victory or oblivion. But here's the part no one expected. What most people missed in the chaos of the abdication was that Camilla's regency gambit was not the only conspiracy threatening the House of Windsor. While King Charles and Prince William were engaged in their internal battle to save the crown from within, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was fighting a second, undeclared war on a different front. This was a war against what palace insiders now grimly refer to as the Montecito Doctrine, a strategy of sustained asymmetric warfare against the monarchy, waged from the secure, sun-drenched base of California. For months, a sophisticated disinformation campaign had been underway, designed to undermine the very legitimacy of the direct line of succession by casting doubt on the parentage of the future king, Prince George. The plot's centerpiece was a set of expertly forged DNA results, crafted to appear scientifically authentic, which were being prepared for a strategic and devastating leak to sympathetic media outlets. This was not random online gossip. This was a calculated strike at the heart of the institution. However, the California branch had made one critical, catastrophic error. They had underestimated Catherine. The Princess of Wales did not just stumble onto this conspiracy, she hunted it down. With the same ferocious precision she applied to uncovering Camilla's emails, Catherine had been tracking the campaign's digital whispers, uncovering a shocking trail of encrypted messages and offshore financial transfers. The money trail led back to a network of private investigators and media operatives with established links to Rachel Meghan Markle's inner circle. The operation was a masterpiece of plausible deniability, run through layers of intermediaries and shell companies, but the pattern was undeniable. The threat was no longer a distant annoyance from a rogue family member. It was a direct attack on the constitutional future of the United Kingdom, orchestrated by a hostile party seeking to create an alternative power structure built on the ashes of the one it had abandoned. Faced with a direct assault on her son's legitimacy, and by extension, the future of the monarchy, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, did not waver. She launched a decisive counteroffensive, a masterful exercise of soft power that systematically dismantled the entire conspiracy, bypassing the unpredictable and often treacherous realm of public relations. She went directly to the source of all truth, science. Under conditions of absolute secrecy and supervised by independent observers from the highest levels of government and law, new DNA samples were taken from herself and her son, Prince George. These samples were not sent to a commercial lab that could be compromised or questioned. They were analyzed by the Royal Forensic Laboratory, an institution whose findings are considered unimpeachable in British courts of law. The results, when they came back, were conclusive. A 99% blood relation between mother and son. Undeniable, unassailable. Armed with this irrefutable truth, Catherine stepped before the world's cameras. Her press conference was a devastating display of calm, controlled fury. There was no emotional outburst, only the cold, hard presentation of fact. She systematically dismantled the conspiracy, laying out the timeline of the disinformation campaign, presenting the findings from the Royal Laboratory, and then, in a final, powerful move, announcing that the full dossier of evidence, including financial records, server logs, and the sworn confessions of the director of the London-based facility that produced the forged documents, had been turned over to the authorities for criminal investigation. Prince William stood beside his wife, his presence a silent testament to their unified strength and resolve. "Our family was attacked in a cowardly and deceitful way," he stated, his voice deep and warm with paternal authority. But the truth, as it always does, has triumphed. The press conference was a strategic masterstroke. It did not just refute a lie, it exposed the liars and turned their own weapon back against them, proving that in the modern monarchy, the ultimate authority rests not in rumor, but in truth. Catherine had proven herself to be the institution's most effective defender. The worlds are closing in on Rachel Meghan Markle. In her sprawling Montecito mansion, she watched the press conference live. As each piece of damning evidence was laid out by the Princess of Wales with clinical precision, the color reportedly drained from her face. She turned off the television and slumped in her chair, the silence in her multi-million-dollar home suddenly suffocating. For months, she had operated under the assumption of invincibility, protected by an ocean of distance and a carefully constructed wall of intermediaries and plausible deniability. There was a catastrophic miscalculation. That night, according to sources close to her shrinking inner circle, she began a frantic effort to erase her digital tracks, deleting old messages and destroying handwritten notes. But it was too late. What had been sent could not be retrieved. The digital breadcrumbs had already been captured by forensic experts. The calls began to arrive, first from lawyers, speaking in urgent, coded warnings about extradition treaties and international warrants, then from panicked associates, all signaling the rapid approach of a legal and social firestorm. The American dream, the carefully constructed empire built on a foundation of royal criticism and curated victimhood, was transforming into a financial and legal nightmare. The conspiracy she had orchestrated from afar, believing herself insulated from any real consequences, had collapsed in on itself. A fleeting image of Prince George, a small, innocent boy she had met only a few times, flickered in her mind a brief pang of remorse, quickly consumed by the overwhelming and terrifying fear for her own future. When a worried and confused Harry entered the room asking what was wrong, she could only shake her head, unable to articulate the full scope of the disaster she had unleashed. The siege was real, and the consequences were just beginning. Back in Windsor, a sense of peace gradually returned. The coronation of King William V was more than just a ceremony. It was a national catharsis, a moment of profound institutional renewal. As the new King and Queen Catherine stood on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, the crowds below sensed they were witnessing not just a transition of power, but the restoration of integrity to the crown. The monarchy had been tested by ambition from within and conspiracy from without, and it had emerged stronger, leaner, and purified by the ordeal. From his private estate, the former King Charles watched the proceedings on television. He reportedly felt a complex blend of emotions: profound pride in his son, unwavering faith in Catherine, and a quiet relief that the crown had passed to hands he trusted absolutely. He had made an impossible choice. He had placed duty above personal feeling, exposing a betrayal that destroyed the central relationship of his life. The story of King Charles's abdication and Camilla's downfall will be studied for generations as a brutal but necessary lesson about power and legacy. It is a reminder that the monarchy still operates by ancient rules, rules where betrayal carries consequences and where justice, however painful, remains absolute. 3 women were at the heart of this crisis: Camilla, who gambled for ultimate power and lost everything; Rachel Meghan Markle, who conspired from afar and now faces a devastating reckoning; and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who fought with quiet, ferocious intelligence to protect her family and won. The conflict has reached its inevitable conclusion. Now, the judgment passes to the jury of public opinion. Was King Charles's decision to expose the truth the act of a monarch placing duty above all else, or was it a personal act of vengeance? Cast your vote in the comments below. Was he right to expose Camilla publicly, or should this have been handled privately? Type Team Charles if you believe he defended the crown, or Team Camilla if you believe he was unnecessarily cruel. The story isn't over yet, but one thing is certain: a new era for the House of Windsor has begun.